Welcome back to my channel. It's me, Pharmacy of Green Heifer Farms, and I am so excited about today's video, which kicks off the first in a 6-part series focused all about how farmers can partner with NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service. If you have no idea who NRCS is or you want to know more, then definitely stay tuned. Farming is a continuous state of learning. You never in farming get to the point that you know it all. You can know a tremendous amount, but there are always new technologies, new scientific discoveries, new concerns that come up. So you're constantly learning. That's why the USDA considers you a beginning farmer if you have 10 years or less, okay? You have an entire decade of farming experience, you are still considered a beginning farmer. That's because there is so much knowledge that farming, agriculture encompasses. So I say that to say, I'm about to drop some free gems here on how y'all can partner better with NRCS, and I'm going to explain who they are and what they do. If you want to partner with them and get some support for your farm to be able to implement more conservation practices, and I'm going to go into what exactly we mean by conservation, and to be able to have a farming operation that's even more economically viable, because I'll be bringing in an RCS agents to speak to you all. I'm bringing in some other farmer experts. So this is going to be a content-rich, robust series. Definitely, if you haven't already, subscribe. Okay, let's go ahead and get that out the way. But ask questions down below. There's going to be a lot of information in the description box, so make sure you check that out as well. So, all right, before I get into it, I also need to say thank you to Rafi USA for, I don't know, would it be considered a sponsorship? Rafi, which stands for Rural Advancement Foundation, Inc., but they go by Rafi USA. They were founded in 1990, and their focus was on the inequities that exist in the food system, particularly with rural farmers. And of course, a lot's changed since 1990. They still adhere to that core mission, but their work has expanded. So they have a wonderful Farmers of Color network where they provide direct resources through the forms of grants to farmers of color. They have other grant programs. They provide a lot of technical assistance, and they happen to be a technical service provider, a TSP, of NRCS. Thank you, Rafi, for including me in this grant that was funded by the NRCS, because they do have grants as well. I'm going to touch on that in this video later on. What I really love about this is that I'm not trying to sell you something where you're spending money. I'm actually able to be part of an effort to show you the money. And it benefits the environment. Like, that's such a win-win. This will, of course, apply more to current farmers, whether you're beginning, intermediate, more seasoned, but it's still good information if you're an aspiring farmer for you to go ahead and have as well, because you know that these resources exist. So I think it's something in here for everyone. It's pretty universal information. However, this grant is focused on farmers of color in the Southeast, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. Is it farmers of color or smallholder farmers? Not quite sure, but I'll clarify down below. I want to go into what is meant by conservation, because depending on who you ask, there can be different definitions, different interpretations of what conservation actually is. So when it comes to NRCS, when they're thinking about the broad umbrella of things that conservation covers, they're thinking about your soil, water, climate, energy, plants, animals. They're thinking about even invasive plants and animals or critters. They're thinking about all of those things, and each of those are what the NRCS calls a natural resource concern. So I'm going to read this definition to you as to what a concern is. A concern is defined as an expected degradation of the soil, water, air, plant, or animal resource base to an extent the sustainability or intended use of the resource is impaired. What that's saying is they're concerned about any natural resource that can be harmed in a way that that resource is its use is no longer at its optimal level, right? So if you have farmland that's been tilled repeatedly, all kinds of chemicals have been applied, the water shed hasn't been considered when people are making agricultural decisions in a certain area. Over time, that soil's health is going to be adversely affected. You're going to be releasing additional carbons into the air. You're going to be affecting the biodiversity of that area. If you till all the time and you're disturbing earthworms, and then you got birds who rely on those earthworms, and you got bigger birds who rely on those smaller birds that rely on the earthworms, it's just a chain reaction that happens. So the NRCS is saying we want to help farmers be able to minimize or mitigate the impairment of these natural resources in a way that benefits the natural resource and all that is dependent on it, as well as makes good business sense for that farmer. It's going to ultimately result in economic benefit as well. So I definitely encourage you to go to the NRCS's website. It is so full of tools and resources and information. It's not the easiest website to navigate. I'll go ahead and say that, but there is a lot of information on it, and it's much better now. It's much better now than it used to be. So take that for what it's worth. But definitely go to their website, look around. They have something on there called Conservation Concern Tool that actually lets you go through each of the concerns, and you can build a list that you can then take with you when you're having a conversation with an NRCS representative or with a technical service provider, TSP, such as Rafi. And again, make sure if you're in the Southeast region, Puerto Rico, or the Virgin Islands, you definitely look in the description box, because there is a link you can fill out, and someone will contact you about working and being able to navigate the NRCS more effectively. Okay, so that's what we mean by conservation. I've explained what the conservation concerns are. Now, I want to go over just a few dollar amounts real quick with you, okay? Okay, so one of the things I noticed when I went to the NRCS website is that they are currently investing an additional $325 million in 71 projects that they're funding through something called Partnerships for Climate Smart Commodities, right? 325 million. So then I was like, well, let me just go and see how much money NRCS has. All right. So I went to this website, USAspending.gov. If you want to know how government money is spent, y'all, go there. It'd be all kind of interesting information. I did not realize that the Department of Agriculture is the fifth largest in terms of the amount of funding it receives. I think the Treasury receives more. I think that was number one. Not necessarily in order: Health and Human Services, Veteran Affairs, Defense, and then it was Agriculture. So they get almost $300 billion. USDA is funded almost $300 billion. I think that was the last funding period. It might be fiscal year 2023 that they're right at $300 billion. So interesting, right? It's a lot of money. So of that $300 billion, about $70 billion is going towards, I think they called it total obligations, and about $58 billion specifically is going to awards. Now, that's a lot of money, whichever pot you look at. That's a lot of money. And the NRCS is one of the most funded agencies that fall under the USDA. So when you're thinking about whether or not you should pursue this type funding, I will say this: they're not giving any of it back to the government. It's going to get spent. Somebody is going to get it. And there's going to be somebodies who get it that don't necessarily need it or are using it the most effectively. If you are a farmer, I strongly encourage you to pursue every opportunity that your farm is eligible for and that makes sense for your business model. All right, so let's talk about who the NRCS is. So again, NRCS stands for Natural Resources Conservation Service. And they are the government entity that is most focused on conservation and addressing the natural resource concerns that I mentioned earlier in the video. So picking up where I left off, I know the lighting has changed a little bit. I had to go wet my whistle. But we were talking about who the NRCS is and the fact that they fall under the United States Department of Agriculture, aka USDA. Now, the USDA itself is comprised of several agencies, offices, and programs. So you have, in addition to NRCS, you have agencies such as FSA, Farm Service Agency. You also have the Office of Rural Development and several others. So definitely, again, go check out the NRCS website, but also check out the USDA's website as well, because that goes into all of the programs that fall under the umbrella of the USDA. Now, NRCS itself also has several programs and initiatives. For the sake of this conversation, I'm going to focus primarily on one of the most common programs that's utilized by farmers, and that is the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, also known as EQIP. Now, EQIP is NRCS's flagship conservation program that helps farmers, ranchers, and forest landowners to integrate conservation into working lands. I actually have a video on EQIP, so definitely be sure to check that out. And just as a reminder, although I commonly use the term farmers, when I say that, it is encompassing all of the producers that fall under the USDA definition of what constitutes a farm. So that can be a tree farm, it can be a fishery, it can be a horticultural focused operation, a nursery, row crops, livestock. All of those are considered farms under the USDA. So when I say farmer, it's including everyone. All right, so we know that NRCS is focusing on farmers, ranchers, forest landowners, and what they're trying to do is integrate conservation into working lands. So these are lands that are involved in agricultural production in some capacity, and that definition can have some nuance. So that's why it's very important to talk to an NRCS representative or to a technical service provider to get more clarification on that. Now let's talk about some of the focus areas for EQIP support. So EQIP includes the High Tunnel Initiative, the Organic Initiative, Air Quality Initiative, Landscape Conservation Initiative, On-Farm Energy Initiative, and it also includes the Colorado River Basin Salinity Project. Salinity. Yeah, I think that's right. So the funding that's available, it varies by state. So that's going to depend on several factors. What are the agricultural needs in your state? What are some of the natural resource concerns, etc.? You can find out more about that through the website, the NRCS website, and also, of course, through an NRCS representative for your state or through a technical service provider. So even though you may hear some of the financial assistance through EQIP referred to as a grant, technically it's not a grant. It is a cost sharing program. You're going to actually enter into a contract with the government, and essentially you are saying, if you agree to implement and carry out this conservation practice to address a specific conservation concern, then the government is going to share the cost with you. And that's often in the form of reimbursement. Now, some producers can qualify for advance payment. So that is a possibility. Again, working with your NRCS representative or a technical service provider will help determine if you do qualify for that advance payment. So it's a cost share agreement. You're going to enter into contract. You are going to implement practices and activities that are going to contribute to cleaner air, water, better soil health, better stewardship of environmental resources, protecting wildlife, creating pollinator gardens, all kinds of things that fall under the umbrella of conservation practices. You're going to do those, and the government is going to say, here, we're going to share the cost with you in order for you to be more conservation minded on your farming operation, right? All right, so that is how EQIP works. So when you hear people talk about a high tunnel grant, it's not a grant. It's a cost sharing, cost assistantship, reimbursement. All of those mean the same thing, but it is money. It is money, all right, that comes back to you. So I ain't leaving no money on the table, okay? You got to tell me no. I am in constant expectation of yeses every single day. But going back to NRCS and its resources, don't forget about the technical assistance that is available. So technical assistance is know-how, and that's very important knowledge for you because someone else has already figured out some things, and NRCS has, again, tons of tools that are available to help you ascertain the condition of your natural resources, that help you be able to track improvements after you have implemented these conservation practices, And there are actual experts, subject matter experts, that NRCS can provide you to help guide you as you are increasing the conservation practices and addressing the natural resource concerns on your farm. So this technical assistance can be secured through working with your NRCS office. Also, again, technical service providers such as Rafi can provide needed technical assistance as well. I do want to touch on some of the grant programs that fall under NRCS. They do have grant programs. So I mentioned earlier that they had recently awarded 71 projects, a significant sum of money, and that is one of the grant programs that EQIP offers. And guess who's waiting on the response regarding some of that money? Guess who? All right. Guess who already was written into another grant? You feel me? Yeah. If you're interested in exactly how my farm makes money, then I encourage you to watch my video on that. But that actually needs to be updated because we've opened up a few more streams of revenue. If you want to know specifically about fundraising for farmers, I will be relaunching the first in that series next month, February, and it will focus on government grants, that's federal, state, local, and subsidies that are out there, how to find them, how to be more competitive in securing those funds, how to leverage them. All of that is in my fundraising course. So that will be relaunching in February. So if you're not signed up for the newsletter, please do so. This was helpful. I hope you got a lot of information. I hope you made it this far, okay? What? We are serious about starting, growing, expanding our farming business in 2023. And I'm here for it. I love that for you. And I hope you love it for me. Thanks so much for watching. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye.